Okay, all right, we're just about ready. Okay. All right, we are live. So hi, everyone. My name is Olivia Brady. I'm the Youth Engagement Coordinator for NYC Votes at the Campaign Finance Board. I use she and they pronouns. And I'm very excited to share with you today a very important live stream about the role of the borough president. And our young people actually have the opportunity to go ahead and interview Deputy Queens Borough President Rhonda Binda, which is super exciting. Just to give you a little bit of background about who we're speaking to today, Rhonda Binda was raised in Southeast Queens. She is a visionary leader with a passion for social and environmental justice. In her youth, Rhonda successfully lobbied the NYC City Council for New York Public Interest Group to shut down Fresh Kills, the largest toxic site in the country. As an attorney, she represented and released wrongly detained clients before the U.S. Immigration Court of Appeals after 9/11 pro bono and broke up internet and cable monopolies. In government, she served in both the Obama, Biden, and Clinton Gore administrations as a U.S. diplomat and in the West Wing. Inspired by her love for her hometown, Rhonda returned to Queens as the executive director for the Jamaica BID, the borough's largest business district, where she took action against stark inequality of resources and investments made in the borough. Under her leadership, Jamaica remarkably rose through the ranks to be named the #1 neighborhood in the city, won #1 awards from the NYC Department of Small Business Services, and #1 in the state for downtown revitalization, raising Jamaica's profile as a unique, vibrant, multicultural center for retail and tourism. She then continued to serve her community as chairwoman of South Asian American Voice, vice president of the Guyanese Girls Rock Foundation, High School Women's Leadership Academy, and on the boards for the Boys and Girls Club of Metro Queens, the New York Hall of Science, and Positive Women United. Rhonda is an internationally recognized People's Choice leader in building smart cities and connected communities. She's an adjunct professor at Medgar Evers College at CUNY and has served on both the 21st Century Government and Foreign Policy teams for the Biden-Harris 2020 presidential campaign. She attended Queens Public School in District 29, and because of her academic potential, was recruited for the prestigious Prep for Prep program, which provided her a path to scholarships to the Lawrenceville School, Duke University, Georgetown University, and Oxford University. Rhonda's traveled to 6 continents, 40 plus countries, and hundreds of cities working with state and local leaders, and lives in Jamaica Estates, Queens. We are so excited to have you here. It's such an honor to be speaking with you and for our young people to have the chance to ask you some questions. And so with that said, I'll pass it over. We have one more young person who will be joining us in a few minutes, but I'll pass it over to Labiba to introduce herself really quickly. And then Labiba, you can go ahead and ask the first question.
Hi, my name is Labiba. I'm 17. I attend the High School of Health Professions and Human Services in Manhattan. I am from Brooklyn, and I'm an ambassador of this program, and today we are just going to be asking some questions with the borough president. And to start off, the first question is, how would you define the role of the borough president, and what are the key responsibilities of that role?
Well, thank you so much, Ambassador Labiba, and thank you so much to Youth New York City Votes. It's such an honor to be here, and so excited to be able to talk more about the incredible work that Borough Halls, especially Queensborough Hall, gets involved in. The Borough President is the chief advocate for the borough, and some of the responsibilities include weighing in on development and how the land is used across the borough. There are hundreds of millions of dollars in the New York City budget, and tens of millions of those capital dollars do go to invest in parks, schools, hospitals, and nonprofits like, for example, Boys and Girls Club, all sorts of amazing institutions across the borough to continue to support the growth as the boroughs grow, to make sure that we have capacity in those important places. And especially right now, of course, hospitals, we're primarily focused on. We also have the responsibility of appointing people to various boards. We have such a diverse community here in Queens that we make sure that there's so much talent, sometimes a hard job, but we are making sure that not only is this Borough Hall the most diverse that ever, that are the boards, and especially our community boards appointment most recently, we had so many young people that had applied, and we're so excited. We worked with all of the high schools and colleges to really get the word out, because the age to join was lowered to, I believe, 16 years old. We also work with New York City Council on pushing key legislation, and we work with the council members in each of our boroughs to be able to help to introduce policy changes. So we have been leading and other very unique initiatives under the leadership of Borough President Donovan Richards Jr. He's actually quite a young man. He started in politics when he was just a teenager and has quickly rose up the ranks because of his leadership and his effectiveness to be, I believe, probably the youngest borough president that we have in Queens. So it's particularly exciting to be here because he's brought that energy to the office. And one of the things that we're doing that I'd love to talk about at some point is launching a youth initiative and a youth council. So excited to be here. And thank you again for inviting me.
That was an amazing response. That was a lot of information, actually. Like, it was actually much more than I expected, really. Okay, so to add on to that question, I would just like to know, how did you become the deputy borough president?
Well, I have to tell you that education was very key to that. You've heard a little bit about how I really worked hard in school. And I think everything that you and the audience are doing right now, you have to build that foundation. So I would say just preparation, I think, is what led me to be able to be appointed to this position eventually. And it's kind of like of course, life is forever a learning process. So the education doesn't end, but it's very important in what you're doing now to build the foundation. I would also say that just as important and key is volunteerism, because you get the experience, but and several times, important times in my career, I learned about opportunities through volunteering. So in addition to school, I would say seek out paid and unpaid internships and volunteer opportunities. And that's what really opened the doors for me. If you're unsure about, whether you are interested in politics, one of the great things that people in government offices love are interns that can get credit. We're starting our program in the fall. So if you're interested in learning more after listening today, please do reach out and on our website, and we should have applications up for that soon. But I found that you get information, you gain trust, when you show that you're willing to put in your hard work, and I guess in business, they call it sweat equity. So I would say continue to pursue your education and look out for interesting internship and volunteer opportunities, because that's really how you start to build a network. And so when career opportunities open up, then you will find that people will remember you. They already know how you work, and they already know that you're somebody that they can trust.
Oh, that's really informative. I mean, I am in other different types of programs. I like to get myself involved, and I will take that advice. I was wondering about the youth initiative that you were talking about. How are you planning to enforce that, and what's that going to be like?
I'm so excited about that, and thank you for asking that question, because as I said, our Borough President Donovan Richards Jr. is young, relatively speaking, to a lot of other people who are in elected office, as you probably know. And it was very important for him that we bring younger voices and empower younger voices to help with all the things that we are involved in. So, for example, I mentioned community boards that deals with land use decisions, often in transportation decisions, how we decide that we are going to bring policies to the city council and how they affect youth. You may remember that last summer, the SIAP program was initially cut back during the pandemic. And so that youth can have much more of a voice as in the process as these decisions that impact youth are being made. And so what's happening is that we are looking at a model of a youth council. There might be two, one for the, I think, I would say 14 to 18 age group, and then another for 18 to 22, because there are sometimes different issues that that young people are dealing with at different stages. And really it's going to be, and we're going to make sure we get people from all over the borough, and there's representation and regionally as well. But it's really going to be up to the council on what sorts of activities and involvement. One of the issues that we're facing today, as you know, there's been a rise in hate crimes across the city. And so most likely next month, we'll be pulling together a group of young people to talk about that. In the fall, I know that we are working on a group to speak with the borough president of youth journalists, people like yourselves. So hopefully you can get involved in that effort. So just engaging in various ways on hot topics, but then looking at long term, how can we look at community policing differently and the relationship between youth and the police? How can we engage more actively in some of the educational initiatives that we have here at Borough Hall and get your active input? Last week we hosted a financial aid workshop for high school students for college. Usually it's in person, and I understand it's about 4 hours long in the hall, but we did our best, taking it online. It was 2.5 hours long. And so if you want to take a look at that, please visit our YouTube channel, because all of our activities are being recorded, and we've had to pivot in this past year. I mean, luckily, I think younger people are more adapted to this new way that we've been involved in and engaging. But we are really what it comes down to is we want to engage more with youth.
Wow. I honestly, the youth initiative, it sounds amazing. It sounds really cooperative, and it sounds like it'll leave like an amazing influence on us young people. So I hope I will probably look into that, and I think my fellow ambassadors would also like to look into it. To add on to like that question, well, shifting to a different topic, how does your office decide how to use grant money, and how do you make sure that New Yorkers who need it the most are prioritized?
Mm-hmm. So I'm glad you asked that question also. So I'll also refer to our website that we post various applications for applying for on our website for grants for schools and organizations that can directly apply for a certain amount of funds that are allocated to each borough and each borough hall. And so to give you an example, there's one organization that is a youth entrepreneurship organization. They just earlier this week, they finished their competition for their startup ideas, and the winners came to learn who won and receive their awards. It was also a partnership with Resorts World, a private sector partner. But this is one of the organizations, for example, that Borough Hall partners with, and usually we've had a relationship where they do receive some grant funding. This is one of the programs that's supporting entrepreneurship. There are others that are in the arts, that are in sports. And I would say that because especially over this past year with the pandemic, so many organizations that were also run by young people stepped up, especially since the older people couldn't really come out as much. We have a list of about over 100 organizations that we've partnered with that has prompted us to create actually a nonprofit network. So one of the other initiatives under Borough President Richards is a new nonprofit network. There's a form, if you do have a nonprofit, that you can start to engage with our office. So in addition to the ones that we worked with over the pandemic, and if you have a group, please look to join. Susie Tenenbaum is in charge of that project, because we're conducting surveys. We want to figure out how can we help you access even more grants. So in the past week, she has an email called Resources or Resource Room. So if you sign up with our network, she'll continue not only for our office, which happens once a year, where we have a budget hearing. This past year, it was 12 hours long. We had so many organizations apply, and again, this was on Zoom. Not only do we have, but we're going to continue to help. We really want all these amazing organizations to get as much funding and support and build their capacity as much as they can. So you'll be able to sign up, and she's already sent out a first few emails, and it's titled Resource Room. So that's giving more access and information on how nonprofits can apply for funding. and for training.
That's a lot of resources, and it seems as if it will actually create an impact. Honestly, it's great to hear all of those things. I'm gonna pass the mic on to Alex, who just arrived. So, Alex, take it away.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, I'm Alex. My pronouns are she, they. I'm just going to ask you, how do borough presidents work together and with other parts of the local government to serve the city?
Thank you, Alex, and nice to meet you. This is a really fun question because, the borough presidents all understand each other. They face the same challenges across boroughs. We all have our identity, but we face the same challenges all across New York City. And one example is earlier this year, because of course, schools were closed. There was a stop to some of the programs that had to be like really hands-on. So one was a culinary program across New York City, has over 1,000 students. And what the borough presidents came together to do, they wrote a joint letter and advocated for funding from another nonprofit that would pay for HelloFresh to deliver boxes of food to the students. And that would help support about 8 classes where they can get on Zoom with their culinary teachers, and they can still continue to learn those skills. So these are the kinds of things that, if maybe one borough president sends a letter, it would, get a little bit of attention. But when you see that this is a citywide program, that it's going to help 1,000 students to keep their education up. I also tried to learn how to cook over the pandemic. And I think that was something that a lot of people, I think, tried their hand at. But the students that were, in these classes, they were able to continue to get that professional training because the borough presidents were able to work together and getting additional funding to mail the food directly to their homes.
Yeah, that's great. I love the idea behind that. Am I asking the next question or will you there? Okay. Can the borough presidents influence how much COVID-19 relief and support their borough can get from the city?
This is a great question, I think, for Queens in particular, because unfortunately, as you know, we were the epicenter for some time. We have both airports, right? So it's hard not to have, the spread, have a huge impact here in Queens. And we saw a lot of devastation across the borough. Just last week, the borough president was involved with a really incredible event that was honoring, those who we lost over the past year. And we are working on a memorial and so forth because it was really it's been a really tough time for our borough in particular. Compared to other boroughs, we only have about 1.7 hospital beds for each 1,000 people. And that's a lot lower than Manhattan, for example, that has 8. And so one of the first things that Borough President Richards and our team has been working on is getting more resources. I mentioned for hospitals, but also testing and vaccination sites to all of the amazing diverse communities and community partners that we develop a closer relationship with over the pandemic because we were given PPE and also food distribution, but we really needed more supplies. And I'm very proud to say that because of the hard work of Borough President Richards, we are actually the first county in New York State to have over 1 million people vaccinated. And so this is an example of someone who, we're holding constant press conferences, really advocating loudly to make sure that we were getting our fair share of resources. And the city heard as well, because in this last budget, we were allocated about $20 million more in funding to help shore up because of, we really had not been receiving the fair share. Now, I want every borough to also to have their increase in resources going directly to them as well. But I have to say, I'm very proud of the advocacy of Borough President Richards and what we've been able to do to, I think, help turn around the story of, Queens being the, having the most devastation to now we're the most vaccinated.
Sorry. Yeah, that is great. That's great. I love that we're the first to get 1 million vaccinations.
Where do you live in Queens?
From Jamaica.
Oh, awesome. Me too.
Um, After Alex, I would like to ask, how do borough presidents make decisions about who to appoint to certain positions, just such as like the appointment to the city planning commission?
Thank you. That's a really great question, because we do have such an incredible, amazing talent pool here. At least I know that it's always difficult in Queens to really narrow down. We always have so many experienced and talented people. But I really think that when we're making decisions, we look at the people who share the values of Borough Hall and of the vision that the borough president has for Queens. And so we're looking for that alignment in people who are passionate about giving back. A lot of these appointments are not paid. They're volunteer, like I talked about before. But it's such a great opportunity to give back, to also lend your expertise for the greater good of your borough. And so it's not easy all the time on making those decisions, because we have such a great diverse pool, but we're really looking to match who best represents the values and the work of the office of Borough Hall. So, because we view them as partners. And there's city planning. We also appoint to the Queens Public Library. We also have several appointments for most of the nonprofits that are the major nonprofits throughout the borough. And so this is one of the ways that we stay connected. And another way that we can help influence decisions that are sometimes like for example, city planning, citywide, across this vast borough, by appointing, having direct appointments from Borough Hall.
So I would just like to say that it seems as if, from like what you said, that you're looking for someone that's more of like a leader, very influential in like, in the communities of New York. And I think that's wonderful to look for someone who's actually ready to take charge and is actually trying to create a difference. I think that's one of the most important, factors in general. So I'm gonna pass it on to Alex, who may have a question to ask.
Yes, I do. I would like to ask, following this question, what are some concrete steps that the borough president can take to support communities experiencing discrimination in their borough? We're especially thinking of AIP people and the Black Lives Matter movement in New York City.
Thank you so much for that question, Alex, Ambassador Alex. We can take a number of steps. So there are a few areas that we're involved in, including police reform. We're involved with bringing awareness through rallies and vigils. We are also on the education side. Actually, I think right now the borough president is hosting an upstander training so that people know their rights and know how to exercise their rights. I think this is being done actually in Korean today. And so, from the beginning of the Black Lives Matter movement, the borough president has been so active himself and has been a supporter. And up until even this past Sunday, we hosted a rally with Congressman Meng with over 2,000 people at Flushing Hall. But at this rally, we brought together so many diverse leaders. We had people from, I would say, every walk of life. We were so excited. We have Reverend Al Sharpton from the National Action Network also speak. We had state level speakers, but as well, like our Attorney General Tish James and Lieutenant Governor Hochul. But we also had all the amazing grassroots organizations, primarily for these groups, and so many younger groups and youth groups and colleges showed up too with their banners, and all of us, rallying against hate. And so we're looking to continue to speak loudly. I believe in the city that we were at the steps at Borough Hall, we were probably, I think, the first in the city to host a press conference bringing awareness on the anti-Asian hate issues. And I think we had it in conjunction with anti-Semitism. Unfortunately, we've also seen a rise. And so there's a lot that we continue to do, including a couple of weeks ago with the results of the decision around the George Floyd murder, hosting a rally to commemorate the justice that we saw, at least temporarily, there. And so on the 25th, we're hosting another town hall, again about hate crimes. And please, again, look to our website to RSVP there. And we're looking to work with the community to continue to engage and make sure that this issue is completely snuffed out. We're the most diverse place in the world here in Queens, and we're so proud of that culture and diversity that we want to make sure that we continue to be, the #1 place that when people want to come to this country, for so many countries, this is their first stop. And we want to continue to be a sanctuary city and borough. And so we're fighting. There are a lot of things that we have been doing and we continue to fight for justice. On the police reform issues, there's a new system that you may be aware of where as promotions are made in the police, now borough presidents have the opportunity to work to appoint community members, both from nonprofit and from community boards if they would like, or from business community. And there's a council that now sits with the selection committee on the NYPD side. So this program just started. We have already been forming in 2 precincts in Queens. And so, again, because our talent pool is so big and is so wide and is so talented here in New York, here in Queens, I know that having this process, I'm so confident that a process like this will begin to see change. So there's so many ways that we can get involved at Borough Hall, and I'm glad that we've been creative in our approach and been bold in our approach, because part of the issue, I think, around why discrimination still persists, it's because we're not addressing it, in a bold way. And I'm so inspired by the work that especially young people have done in the past year to just come out and say we're not going to continue to be silent as we see injustice happen to all people. And so really I have to just really credit the young people around the country and around the city for taking the lead on this starting last year.
Yes, that's a great thing that that's a great thing that the Queensborough president is doing. I remember seeing some protests on Jamaica Avenue over the summer. My next question is, what are your priorities? Sorry. My next question was, what are your priorities and concerns from Queens, and what steps have you and your office have taken to address them?
Well, thanks again for that question and asking. I mentioned a few of the priorities, of course, having to do with healthcare and us bouncing back after COVID. Of course, if you'd also like to get a more in-depth of what our priorities are across the borough, there is on our YouTube the State of the Borough address that the borough president delivered in February, and will more detail outline. But I'll just highlight a few now. So, of course, healthcare. Economic development. We were lucky to receive a grant of $20 million from the Steve Cohen Foundation. That these are the owners of the Mets, just for small businesses in Queens. And so we're, I think, have mostly dispersed that funding as fast as we could across the borough, and especially in zip codes that were most in need. So economic development, of course, to make sure that people are getting back to work, but as education, of course, is so important to us, which is why that we've invested so much in our schools and making sure that even if it's virtual, like last week, we still continue to host all of the events that help our students and will help them towards their paths to college. And colleges and universities are on the borough president's tour schedule. He was just at Queens College and York College last week. So he's making the rounds, and we really do want to make sure that we continue to invest in our schools. There's some really cool projects that we're doing with solar on top of school roofs, and redoing some of the and improving some of the school buildings themselves. But one thing that I think we're exploring now, this has to do more with the last question, is how can we also incorporate more diversity training also into our public schools. And it's hard to do because we are such a amazingly diverse borough, but I do think that we have like a bigger awareness now that this is an important aspect. So this is something that we're going to be working. Monica Gutierrez is our director of education, that we're going to be working on to see how can we also, work with a more a culturally correct and appropriate curriculum. And I'm hoping this is something that the Youth Council decides to look at as well.
Yes, that's great. It's really great. I'm going to pass it on to Labiba.
Hi again. So this question is more so for the environment. And so in general, we know that public spaces are important for our environment and for the safety of like the young people. So I was wondering, how can the borough president ensure that there are safe, clean, and accessible public spaces and parks for residents?
Thank you so much. He has actually allocated a fair amount of capital funding to parks. I think in the tune of about $9 million in this last fiscal year. And so we're so excited about that because, as you know, more people are beginning to realize, especially, after being locked up in our houses for so long, that how important it is and to have to make sure that we have public spaces for our health, our mental health, to exercise, for sports, for us to gather, for concerts. And so we know that we have some additional park allocations that are coming up that will be announced. But also there's this program that the city has introduced called Open Streets. And there looks like some open streets will be permanent. I know across our borough, and I'm guessing across other boroughs. So that's exciting because it's going to give us, more opportunities for us to play and to engage and to be together out in the open. There are a few really interesting developments on the concert side. And we have a really great park, Flushing Meadow Cronus Park, and we are in talks to have a few major festivals. The Afro Punk Festival is sort of changing into a new iteration, and they want to have this event in September in Queens this year. And then we were just told that Governor's Ball will be in Queens, and so we're partnered also with the New York Philharmonic on a number of concerts this summer, and we've sponsored a number of free drive-ins. So we're encouraging people to take advantage of the parks and the new open streets policy so that we can activate our spaces outside and we can engage within our communities right here in each of our boroughs.
Oh, that sounds amazing. I think it's very important to take care of the environment. And I think that, with the whole thing about COVID, it's important for us to get out and just enjoy what we once had. And I'm going to pass the mic to Olivia. She's going to be closing us out. Thank you.
I'm actually going to toss it over to Alex for one quick question. We were all very curious about the 1989 Supreme Court ruling that changed the role of the borough president. And I think it'd be great to just give our youth, before we end things, just a little bit of historical context about the borough president's role. So Alex, go ahead.
So we know you've mentioned a lot about the borough president, what you've done. But my question is, considering that the write-up for the new way our city government currently works from the 1989 ruling, how has that ruling changed and impacted the role of the borough president?
So that Board of Estimate was ruled that it was unconstitutional because we did not give a fair representation of one person, one vote. And so, unfortunately, this sort of dismantled for the borough presidents, where they had, in fact, probably more say and more power on issues regarding the budget and regarding land use. But we of course have to honor this, constitutional right of one person, one vote, the closest we can. And so that really did have a big impact on the power of borough presidents. And so we no longer have that ability to directly impact budgets and other matters. So now our vote comes at a strong recommendation. The problem was there were boroughs like Queens and Brooklyn that have much more people than a borough like Staten Island, but they were still all on the Board of Estimate. We're still all just given one vote. The Board of Estimate was a strong organization, but the way that the voting structure, because it was one borough, one vote, it violated the fair representation of one person, one vote.
Well, thank you so very much for spending a little bit of your evening with us. I know I learned a ton, and I'm super excited to get all of these young folks engaged and excited about local government and really get them involved in the upcoming elections. And so with that, I'll just ask, I know you mentioned the youth initiative earlier, but what are some other ways, perhaps, or if you just want to speak a little bit more to it, how can young people get involved with the Borough President's Office?
Well, thank you so much for that question. The office at Borough Hall that organized this event is actually a new office of civic engagement that we encourage you to get involved. Tim, I will butcher his last name, but Tim from our office, you can reach out. He's the only Tim here, is in charge. He's also a younger person that has been elevated to this role because of the incredible work he did during the census. Speaking of one person, one vote, you may have seen there's a little controversy around that we may be losing a seat because of under 100 votes, which we're going to challenge, I believe, that decision. So that shows you how important it is to engage and to vote. Just because of 89 people that were not counted, we may lose in New York an entire congressional seat. So I cannot stress to you enough to please ask your friends, make sure that you learn about how various ways. I know that before you're a voting age, you're somewhat limited in the formal process itself. But there's so many other ways to get engaged, and so please reach out to our office. The Youth Council, as I said, we'll have two cohorts for that. Ludi in our office, but you could always, of course, just reach out to myself. But engage. Please follow us on Facebook. It's Queens BP Richards. It's Queens BP Richards at Twitter, and Queens BP Richards on Instagram. Our website is www.queensbp.org. So please just engage with us in any way that you can, because we want to hear from you as the Youth Council Still Information. So we'd love your input on the areas and the issues that you think that we should focus on going forward.
Well, again, thank you so much. We know you're very, very busy, so it means a lot for you to take time out to talk with our young people. I also want to just say thank you again to the Department of Youth and Community Development for continuing to work with us on this series, as well as Y Vote. Shout out to Alex, who is a Y voter. It's just amazing to work with all of these young people and for them to get to interact with public servants. It's a very special experience. And so with that, I think we can go ahead and close out our evening. Thank you so very much. Remember to, I should also plug, right, the voter registration deadline to vote in the June primary is May 28th. You can visit nycvotes.turbovote.org to register if you are 18 or older. We'll also link more resources about early voting, absentee voting, etc. in the comments. Thank you all so much and have a great evening.
Thank you, ambassadors. Thanks, Olivia.